colors of the sunset. Walking the outback in search of a dream. Mystic Alchemist. Copyright 2021 Mystic Alchemist. Chapter 3. A drive in the country. Early again at their park bench the next Saturday, willing her to come early to give them more time together. The past week had been another blur, but this time it was thinking of her vision. Picturing the mountains and the valleys. Imagining the feel of the elements against his body, but mostly feeling her by his side as they experienced the world arm in arm. Now he was imagining her cuddled against him on this bench, an arm holding her to him, the fingers of his other hand entwined with hers, and he completely missed her arrival. "Penny for them," she said, the sound bringing him back instantly. "You and me exploring the world," he said, feeling no fear of telling the truth for once as he stood to help her down. "I was thinking the same thing. You said before you had a car. Truck. Would it be too much to ask to take me for a drive out of this city? Half an hour to go and get it. Can you wait? You don't mind? I'll try to park near the path by the road. Dark blue truck, but I'll come to get you. You will wait. I'll wait. I have plenty of time today." He tried not to run, knowing it would make him puffed and then he would end up having to stop and it would take longer. He tried jogging, but stopped quickly when he felt pressure in his chest. Nothing for it but a fast walk. Of course the truck was locked and the keys were inside the apartment. Then the cab wasn't really ready for a passenger, that side covered with bits and pieces that might be handy to have. And then the floor. Things must have been breeding there. Load after load he ferried to dump just inside the apartment door, then a small brush and dustpan to tidy the last small bits. Lastly he grabbed a cloth to wipe the dash and an old blanket he had to cover things on the back of the truck when he needed some prepper, he thought as he took one last look around his handiwork. It would have to do. It wasn't until he was back close to the park before he thought he should have taken something to drink and maybe some snacks. A prepper would have done that much. Of course there was no empty parking space close to the park entrance. It might be Saturday afternoon, but there was still car after car lined alongside the roadway. He had to race around the block and come past the entrance again, one impatient car blaring behind him when he was inching ahead willing a parking space to appear. Loading zone. 5 minutes only. The truck seemed to slide into that space by itself and he was out the door and running back toward the park entrance. The sign by the pathway said no running, but it said nothing about fast walking. Blood thumping in his temples and breath panting when he got to their bench under the large bay tree, but she wasn't there. Both hands bent gripping the seat while he thought. She'd promised to wait. He hadn't been that long really. He turned to his wrist to count the minutes, but he'd left its warning alarm home. What now? Maybe she'd got tired of waiting. Maybe something had come up. Maybe someone else had come. She did mention a car before. Did she go off with someone else with a car? Sitting on the bench now, searching slowly side from side for her and realizing he couldn't even remember what color dress she was wearing, that is if she was wearing a dress. Maybe it was pants. He didn't think it was black, but what color was it? No point waiting now. Standing again he ambled along the path she would have taken, glancing up every little time to check each side for her. Out through the park entrance and along the footpath in the direction of his parked truck. "You went right past me." The sound of her voice lifting his head to see her leaning on the fence in front of him. "I saw you trying to find a parking place before and thought it best I come closer to make it easier." "I didn't." "Sure," she interrupted. "I saw you hadn't seen me. Only looking ahead." "There's a lot of things I don't see," he said, extending his hand to try to touch hers. "That's it there," she said, her face facing his blue truck. "It's bigger than a car. I can help you in. You just want to hold me." He felt the playful tone in her voice and it soothed the tightness in his chest. "Maybe I do," he said, trying to copy her tone. "And maybe I'll let you," she said, taking firm hold of his hand. "But only to give you an excuse to hold me a moment." Hand in hand they walked the 2 car spaces to the truck, him on the side ready to open the passenger side door. "Your carriage awaits, my lady," he said as he opened the catch and pulled the door open and lowered his head in a small bow. "I'll need my hand," she said, and he realized he still had hold of her hand. "1,000 pardons, my lady," he pretended in a manner of a manservant from countless movies. Claire needed no help getting into the truck, but he stayed close in case. Seeing now that she was wearing black pants and as she settled her feet it was ladies' sports shoes, white with a pink stripe. "We'll need to find another reason for you to feel my bottom," she said, her voice playful and tempting. "I'm sure it will be warm and soft. A polite way of saying flabby, methinks." "As my lady insists," he said, imagining he was keeping the playful tone still. "Shall I close my lady's door?" Her nod had the door closed and him scampering around to the driver's side. "Anywhere in particular?" he asked, turning to her after he'd settled into the driver's seat, keys out and in the lock. "The hills. I like being up high and looking down at the city. Sometimes I imagine I'm a bird, soaring high like an eagle and looking at the people below swarming like ants over the roads as they go about their lives never knowing I'm watching them." It was times like this he regretted getting this truck. So much room in the cab, there seemed enough space for a football team to sit between them. Too much distance to reach and touch her, and then the seat belts forcefully holding them apart. No way to feel her softness against his hips and the warmness of her breath when she turned to speak. "Do you know a good place?" "We'll find one together," she said. "Somewhere private. Like young lovers," he said softly. "You're trying to put ideas into my old mind," she chuckled. "Too many nights alone," he said, then realizing he was damping the mood added, "and you're not that old. I've spent my share of lonely nights. It taught me to make my own world. And I am old. Don't feel it, but the calendar never lies, and yet so much of life is still to be explored." He had no immediate reply, other than to think how much like him she was in so many ways. "We should have a picnic," Claire said out of the silence. "It's been years and years. I should have brought things." "We don't need things. Find us a shop and we'll make the best picnic in the world." He drove on, looking for a shopping center. "There. Over there. That supermarket." Her excitement like a small child willing her parents to do her bidding. He drove into the parking lot and searched for a space big enough for the truck and them both to get out. He ended up straddling 2 spaces, but that let him open her door fully and be ready to help her out. "I'm not an invalid yet," she said as she struggled to get down, but she did put a hand on his shoulder to help her make the final step. "Let me pay," she said as they walked hand in hand like young lovers toward the entrance. "You're providing the transportation and I'll provide the snacks." "That's fair." He was going to grab a basket as he went through the supermarket entrance, but chose a trolley in case she needed something to hold on to other than him. Of course, with his luck, once he'd pushed it away from the queue he found that one of the front wheels wobbled and wanted to steer to the left. He was thinking of taking it back to swap, but Claire was already some steps ahead making for the deli section. He'd make do. He caught up with her when she was reaching for a ticket from the bright red dispenser in the middle of the long refrigerated cabinet. 62, she said aloud to no one in particular. The number on the display on the wall read 60. "Do you want me to look for some picnic plates while we wait?" he said. "Cutlery too," she said, turning to him. When he set off searching, he realized it might have been better to get her to do it. Up and down the aisles, trying to look both sides at once and trying to keep in mind what he was supposed to be looking for. When he did find a section of paper plates and plastic forks, he wasn't sure what sort she would really want. Many of the items seemed more suited to a children's party than a picnic. Garish patterns passed over for plain white plastic plates and then transparent plastic forks, knives and spoons, a pack with 10 of each in one packet labeled as a picnic set. A sleeve of clear tumblers added as well. Surely they would need a drink. A pack of plain serviettes were last. At least they were all light to carry, but he couldn't help remembering that he had a full set of eating utensils amongst his prepping gear in the apartment, all catalogued and stored for when he might need it. Claire's attention was with the deli worker as she spooned a Greek salad into a small frosted plastic tub. "Some of that one alongside it to the right too," Claire said when the attendant indicated the tub was as full as she was going to make it. Paul placed the utensils in the trolley, 3 tubs already there, their contents hidden behind large labels. He'd see them later. "You want anything special?" Claire asked. He lifted his eyes from the trolley to say, "Only you." "Oh, you're terrible," Claire said a little miffed. "Men," the attendant said. "They're good for some things," Claire said to the lady. "But shopping is not one of those things." Both women laughed while Paul thought he was better off studying the display of pet blankets on the other side of the aisle. After he'd carefully studied the patterns on the blankets until he could have redrawn them in his sleep, Claire came. "Crusty bread next," she said. He let her lead, staying behind to try to navigate the trolley in a straight line behind her, then waiting as she chose a round loaf, wrapping its bottom to test before dropping it into the trolley amongst the pile of plastic tubs and white paper parcels in the wire basket. "I'm glad you thought of the serviettes. Maybe a bottle of water, and what do you think for drinks?" "Driving, I'll have to have soft drink." "Can I choose?" She didn't give him time to answer, darting along an aisle and making for a bottle of purple drink. "Looks like wine and no one will know it wasn't." He made out the word port on the label as she placed it in the trolley, her expression like a child trying to hide a forbidden treat. "Dessert," she said. "I like something sweet to end." He had a smart remark in mind, then caught sight of her face. "I was waiting," she said, smiling. "But I held my tongue," he said, returning her smile. "You can tell me when we're alone." Her eyes twinkling as though there was the most deliciously wicked secret waiting to be revealed. "I think we have everything now." He wanted to say he didn't really need anything but her, but kept his peace. They got close to the checkouts before Claire laughed out loud, people around turning to see what they were missing. "I was waiting for your comment," she whispered into his ear as he saw people staring to make out the secret while he felt her warm moist breath exciting his earlobe, the heat spreading to cover his whole face. "They're all wondering what gossip they missed," she said a little further from his ear this time. "And they will be even more jealous looking at your flushed face." He kept quiet, seeing Claire grinning and those around averting their faces as she stared toward their eyes, one by one. "Makes me feel like a teenager again." "I did enjoy that." "We're going for a picnic," Claire said to the young woman at the checkout as he transferred the contents of the trolley to the bench. "Bit late for that," the woman said, sounding only half interested as she moved the tubs through the scanner one by one, before dropping them in a plastic bag. Then she froze and turned to Claire. "I meant bit late in the day for a picnic. Most people are ready to go home by now. Before it's too cold, that is. And they miss out on the best part of a picnic," Claire said. "A little chill is worth it to see the sunset from up high. Up the hills then. Even colder there. A good reason to cuddle close. Men always like their cuddling." "Yes," the checkout woman shrugged before she resumed moving items through the scanner, and Paul squirmed past Claire to take charge of the 2 bags of their shopping while Claire paid with a card. "Have a nice evening," the shop assistant said, but she was looking toward the next customer before Paul could answer.